Hello, I am Dr. Randall Bell. We're here at Core IQ where we learn about cool stuff like time management, goal setting, conflict resolution, leadership. In fact, on leadership, we're going to talk today about the 8 stages of leadership. Now, there are lots of leadership models and we cover a lot of that at Core IQ, but this one's a chart I put together actually years ago when I was going through doctoral research on leadership and the various types of leadership. There are true leaders and there's also toxic leaders. So there's good examples of leadership, there's bad examples, and then there's this kind of 8 stages. So what I was basically doing is I was taking tons of academic information and trying to compile it into one graph. And to talk about it, I've got my buddy Danny Ray. You're an expert in a lot of things. I know you do a lot of conferences, a lot of speaking, and you're a performer, entertainer. So I'm going to go through the academics of it, but I'd like your feedback and more kind of the real world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So, it gets progressively better, but let's start at the bottom, the worst examples, and then kind of work up, if that makes sense. And then there's a good example where, basically we're dealing out of fear. And we think of fear as just totally negative, but it can be positive. If I'm fearful, I might have been in a car wreck, you go in the ER, and you got doctors who are leaders who are barking out orders. That's not bad.
Right. We don't want to operate out of fear in the negative way, but fear is a part of where we are. Your kid runs in the street, you're going to operate, and out of the fear of what might happen to them, you might yell at them, you might do something that might, from an outsider's point of view, seem negative, but like this is what's best. So fear is not always negative.
Yeah. So there's an example of a good way to deal with a crisis and recovery. There's also a negative side where we're talking about terror and terrorizing people, and that's probably a pretty toxic way of going about things.
So an example would be of an alcoholic father, right? Everybody becomes afraid of him because he's handling things and terrorizing people in the way he is yelling at his kids. Not every alcoholic father, but I'm talking about the one that's abusive with their language, abusive maybe with their actions, and so they're trying to create fear out of their actions and what they're saying and doing.
Totally get it. So we step up from fear as position. I guess, position is, there's got to be some rank and order. On the positive side, I guess you have an army general who's, making commands. There's got to be respect for position. That can be negative too, where you're saying, hey, I'm your boss. You have to do this, be domineering. What do you think about this whole position thing?
Position could be good or bad. It's what you do. Is the boss example, there's no problem with the boss giving an order. There's a difference. So if they don't think you're willing to step in, if you don't have a servant's attitude at all, and it's just like, it's my way or the highway, you're doing this, you're not going to get people to own into your company, own into what you're doing. And so it's not going to accomplish long-term what you want to accomplish anyhow, because you're not leading effectively.
You're right. And I've talked about leadership with Mrs. Leo Fender a lot. And Leo Fender invented the electric guitar. He built an empire. He had the position, but he never flaunted it. He came to work dressed like everybody else in the factory. And that's one thing that everybody respected about him. He never used position to push anyone around. But everybody knew he was a leader and everybody respected his position as well.
I think that's one of the great things about the show Undercover Boss. Is there something that people get with leadership, that when you're willing to serve, that when you're willing to be one of us and you're not just lording it over us, that we want to be a better worker. We want to serve under you. We want to let you lead because we know that you know where you're going and you're willing to work with us, not just, point orders and bark orders at us.
Okay, so we got fear and then we got position. Another way to lead is out of the data, kind of a knowledge of the facts and figures and that kind of thing. I mean, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think data is a dangerous thing because sometimes it could take a position of arrogance on the negative side. But when you come in with data and humility, you're humbly presenting this, going like, the data is showing that that over time our numbers are dropping, instead of coming in and going, hey, the numbers are dropping, we need to do something about, is to be able to show, here's what the information we have can be very effective. And without looking at the data, you're not going to be able to know the results that you have. But it's how you handle that and how you handle your team in that situation.
Yeah, I like that. So kind of what I hear you saying is the data is good, but it's not the end all. And so instead of clubbing people over the head with facts and figures, there's got to be a presentation style that goes along with it.
Right. And sometimes you're looking at a data of a short, data can be skewed, statistics can be skewed. Sometimes looking at accurate data, though, in a short time frame might not be what's reflective of a long term. And so you have to look at that over the course of time and see, is this going to be the most effective strategy for us to move forward?
Okay, so a step up from the data is benefit, meaning there's incentive. So like, if you meet this sales goal, here's this or who's that. Like any leadership style, that can be used properly or misused. What does it look like to you?
Yeah, I know I've talked to people that work at Amazon, and it's a great strategy and they have the ability, it's a billion-dollar company, to be able to give away things, but it creates a lot of camaraderie and excitement for the team and move. So I think that reward can be used very effectively. On the negative side of that is sometimes people will model things and copy things that they're not Amazon, and then they're like, oh, we're going to give away this, and they don't have the ability to do that. So I think that could be like a negative, is just taking somebody else's strategy and not developing your own based on your data, based on your position, based on what you have going on at your company or your business, your school.
So what works for one organization may not work for all organizations. You got to use a little intelligence in picking things that are appropriate for your team, your group.
Yeah, I think it's one of the dangers that people have is they see this massive growth in a company, and so they go, oh, what did they do? And we're going to try to copy it.
Right.
But usually that growth isn't transferable. There's some principles in there that might be, but people will try to take exactly what they did, and that could be a negative thing for your company or your business.
Okay, so a step up from the benefit is the duty. Now, on the positive side of duty is, respect and that kind of thing. On the negative side is kind of, personal glory and ego, that kind of thing. What does that all look like to you?
There's an ancient story. One of the most famous stories is the Tower of Babel, and they built up this tower to make a name for themselves. And I know a lot of people are it's just about me. And when it becomes about pride and ego, is you're going to fall short in terms of your leadership style if you don't have the other things of being respectable and being humble. Is I think those are some of the core things that you want to see. And it's not that you can't make a great name for your business, all that, but what's your name stand for? Your name has significance. A friend of mine works for UPS, and literally every plane that he signs off on, he's saying that if this flight goes down, I am responsible for it. So when he signs his name on it, I mean, it is literally people's lives in his hands. And when we sign our names on stuff, when we get behind something as a company, as a person, what are we about? What's our character? Is it going to be on this side, that's prideful and conceited and about yourself? Or is it going to be about others and serving the good of others in the company?
I love that. Yeah. Great examples. Okay. So we go from duty to connection. Now that can be good in terms of teamwork and synergy, and it can be bad in terms of putting peer pressure on others. So connection has it's a two-edged sword too. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll give you an example with a deck of cards. I don't know, some of I do magic for a living and love it. But if I only had one card to work with, I know maybe one or two tricks, not a lot, but I know thousands with a full deck of cards, right? Yeah. I know some with 4 cards, 4 ace trick, but they're limited, but the more you have on your team, you get to that sweet spot, 52 being the magic number,
yeah.
Right? There's a sweet spot that works with every team, sometimes you're going to have too many people, and that's not going to be your sweet spot. Sometimes you're going to have too few, but teams just make things work. I have there's a nonprofit organization that wanted to do something down in the Dominican Republic, and they were a single team working down in the Dominican Republic, and somebody approached them. I was there working a booth next to them, and they said, hey, if we brought 2,000 people down, would you be able to work with 2,000? They're used to teams of 5 to 10 coming in, 2,000. And they're like, absolutely. And they had, they gave them all the things that they could do, as they knew with a larger team, they would be able to handle on the situations. And so you have to know what you're able to handle personally as a company, as an organization.
Yeah. Now, but it's a two-edged sword, because you've given some good examples, but if you have the wrong team where they're trying to make people fit in and kind of force, with peer pressure, that can train wreck things too.
Yeah. And the example I think of with that is we live in a complicated arena of social media, and there's a lot of peer pressure, and there's a lot on bullying with that. That's more on, the personal level, but it happens all the time with people at international level, and then at, nobody knows who they are, where people put this pressure on them to perform, this pressure on them to fit in, to be a certain way. And I think that's one of the things that we long for, is to fit in, whether that's fit in at school, fit in. You talked about working in the prisons. People want to fit in. They want to find, where's the place where I belong.
Right.
And so this side of it, you're going to find a place where you belong and part of a team. And on this side, you're going to feel like pushed and compelled and like, I'll do it. But it's out of spite or out of duty, not out of the right reasons.
Yeah, and people can manipulate that, desire we all have to connect. And, we think of bullying as something that happens in middle school or high school or elementary school. It happens in the executive boardrooms. I mean, it happens, across the spectrum of society from A to Z.
Yeah.
And wherever it happens, it's bad. It creates a lot of problems. So, okay, so good examples and bad examples. The next one is enjoyment. I mean, we're kind of getting to a higher level of things. My dad worked for Fender's company and everything. Yeah. He enjoyed it. He loved working there. And that was a big part of the motivation. And as a kid growing up playing the guitar, I loved that my dad worked there. So there was a lot of fun in the atmosphere. That seemed like a pretty nice, kind of thing. What can that look like, good and bad?
This is, what do you want to do, and those things that you want to do, you get to have fun, you get to play games. Is like, sometimes we get so mixed up in the heaviness of life as we forget we need to have some fun. On the other side of that, you have people that are having fun at other people's expense. So you and your buddies are out at a bar and you guys are having a good time, and you see somebody that you could push around, now to your buddies it seems like fun, it seems like, oh, we're having a good time, but it's at somebody else's expense. And I'll give you like a personal example. I traveled for a decade with a friend of mine on the road. We've been to all 50 states and doing shows, and he went with me to all of them, and we would do bets all the time. We play a card game, and so having fun, but then we have a bet, so. But the guidelines we gave for the bets was, it can't affect somebody else. It can't make them feel like they're less than or put them in a bad position. And so, I had to do cartwheels on a plane one time. Try doing cartwheels with nobody seeing you. I'm embarrassed, but I'm not embarrassing somebody else, where if I had to sit on somebody's lap, like that's bothering them, that's going into their space.
Probably.
So now, I'm doing something that I want because it's with my friend, so I think it's that fine line of like, you could have a lot of fun, and I think we're designed to laugh and enjoy life, but not doing that at the expense of others.
I love that point. Another point on the positive and negative side is, on the negative side, if you're always screwing around, you're not getting your work done. So I'm all for, I'm all for having a good time. But, you can take anything too far, and that's one of them. In excess, it becomes a distraction.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So enjoyment, and here's the top one. The word is love. It's passion, where you're just really excited about it and excited to go into work. On the negative side, you got, obsession and addiction. I mean, you're passionate, but it's in a the toxic way. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, this is a real personal one for me, because I feel like this is a fine line. Like, there was a day where I was obsessed with magic and sleight of hand and conjuring, and when I was a kid, I'd often work 8 to 12 hours a day on the sleight of hand and just lived in my own bubble. It was an escape from some of the stuff that was going on in the home at that time. But when I got married, and I wanted to be in my own world, and I really literally could tune out the world, and I would just be, and if somebody interrupted, I either couldn't hear them or I'm frustrated and, would respond in a way that wasn't healthy. Where I've learned is just like, I love this. I'm passionate about it. I want to enjoy it, but it's not my life. It's not everything to me. But there's that fine line for people that are in the arts. I was listening to a book where somebody was talking about their music and how it just became an obsession, and that destroys relationships, is because you're so focused on that, this thing that's great, this love and this gift that you've been given, begins to hurt other people, which you don't want.
Yeah, I hear it. And then the obsession can be being a workaholic. I mean, you love your work, but you're really kind of self-medicating and staying away from the real world. In our office, we close the office Friday at 2:00. Yeah. And sometimes people are hanging out. It's like, no, we have a life. We come to work early Monday through Thursday so we can leave early on Friday. I want everyone to have, balance and enjoy life. And, we happen to be close to the beach, go to the beach, enjoy life. So you want to do the love and enjoyment thing for sure, but you don't want to take it too far and become a workaholic and get freakish about it.
With the workaholic, there's a book. It's called Great at Work. I think it came out in 2018, and it's by a researcher, and he talks about this idea is he compared different companies, he compared different people of their work ethic, and these people that are working 80, 90 hour weeks to somebody who's working like a 50, 60 hour week, and how the 50, 60, they always outdid the 80, 90, because you just can't operate at that capacity. So what they would show is like the work would go like this, and then it'd plateau. And so they're working 40 hours a week in plateau, where these guys, they would just, hit their peak and go home, hit their peak, so they're kind of always operating at full capacity. And so they end up just consistently outperforming, and they had all kinds of different tests. You'd have to look up the book, Great at Work.
Yeah. Love it. Love the conversation. Love your examples. I mean, the basic thing is that there's 4 main points here. There's a good way to do things that are healthy. There's a bad, toxic way. And then also there's love at the top and there's fear at the bottom. Fear is not necessarily a bad thing, because there are times where you got a crisis and you got to deal with it. Right. And like any of these, there's a positive or a negative way of dealing with it. This kind of rounds out a big discussion, a big spectrum of these leadership styles. Yeah. I think a good leader is aware of all of this. They're aware of all the categories. They're aware of the right way to do things. And also they're aware of the wrong way to do things, so that they are aware of themselves when they kind of wander into that territory. Right.
No, I think that's a beautiful example of that, is just showing the good and the bad. It's like these things, it's not like, don't ever be afraid. There's good things you could do when you are afraid. And don't ever, or just love, you could love the wrong things, I think there's that balance of both that you've done really well with this.
And the nice thing is there's a spectrum of emotional intelligence. That's really what we're talking about, is emotional intelligence, because you don't have to be a CEO. You could be a mom or a dad and have kids where you're a leader in that role. Right. And so this applies not just in the office or at work. It applies in not just government agencies. It applies in our home, and it applies when we're coaching our kids, soccer thing. It applies across the board.
We're all leading somebody. Somebody's following us, and
for better or for worse.
we want it to to be for better,
exactly.
That's why we put this together.
Yeah, perfect. Well, no, you. And thank you for coming. I'm really happy you're the guy I got to discuss this with, because you bring so much to the table. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And thanks you guys for watching. Make sure, study this stuff, think about it, fill out the worksheets, like it, share it, discuss it with your families, discuss it at work or at school. Let's keep the conversation going with Core IQ. See you next time.